My mother-in-law tried to prove I was an unfit wife, so I proved she was an unfit mother instead. Living with constant scrutiny from my husband's mother felt like being trapped in a glass house where every move was judged and dissected. She moved into our guest room after her divorce, claiming she needed time to get back on her feet financially. What started as a temporary arrangement stretched into 8 months of pure torture, where she documented every perceived flaw in my housekeeping, cooking, and general existence as a wife. She would wake up at 5 in the morning and immediately start taking photos of dirty dishes I left in the sink from the night before. Her camera roll became a comprehensive collection of evidence against me. Unmade beds, dust on furniture, expired milk in the refrigerator, and any small mess that accumulated throughout normal daily life. She created detailed notes about my cooking schedule, what meals I prepared, and how often I ordered takeout when exhaustion hit after long work days. The breaking point came when she presented my husband with a folder filled with printed photographs and handwritten observations about my domestic failures. She sat him down at our kitchen table and went through each piece of evidence methodically, explaining how I was clearly unprepared for marriage and unsuitable as a future mother. Her presentation included timestamps, dates, and even weather conditions to provide context for my alleged shortcomings. My husband looked uncomfortable, but didn't immediately defend me, which stung more than her accusations. She had been working on him for months, planting seeds of doubt about my character and capabilities. Her manipulation was subtle but effective, making him question whether he had made the right choice in marrying me. The woman who raised him was systematically dismantling his confidence in our relationship. That night, I decided to fight fire with fire and started my own documentation project. If she wanted to play detective, I would show her what real investigation looked like. I began paying attention to her daily routines, habits, and the small details she thought nobody noticed. My observations revealed patterns that painted a very different picture of the woman who claimed to be the perfect mother and role model. She left dirty dishes in the sink for days when she thought nobody was looking. Her bedroom became a disaster zone, with clothes scattered everywhere and old food containers growing mold under the bed. She hoarded shopping bags filled with random items she bought impulsively, creating fire hazards in what was supposed to be a temporary living space. The bathroom she used remained uncleaned for weeks, with hair clogging the drain and soap scum covering every surface. More concerning were her phone conversations with friends, where she gossiped about our marriage and shared private details about our relationship. She would stand in the backyard talking loudly about our financial situation, my work schedule, and intimate aspects of our lives that should have remained confidential. Her betrayal of trust went far beyond normal mother-in-law complaints and crossed into malicious territory. I discovered she had been going through our mail, opening credit card statements and bills that belonged to us. She made copies of important documents and kept them in a folder in her room, claiming she needed to understand our financial stability. Her invasion of privacy extended to searching through our bedroom when we were at work, looking for evidence to support her case against me. The most shocking discovery came when I found her diary, left open on the kitchen counter after she received an upsetting phone call. The entries revealed her true motivation. She was terrified of losing her son to another woman and would do anything to drive us apart. She wrote about feeling replaced and unwanted, describing elaborate plans to create conflict in our marriage until he chose her over me. Her diary entries also revealed disturbing details about her own past relationships and the real reasons behind her divorce. She had been controlling and manipulative with her ex-husband, monitoring his activities and creating drama whenever he tried to maintain friendships or hobbies. Her children from her first marriage had limited contact with her because of her toxic behavior and inability to respect boundaries. Reading her private thoughts gave me insight into her psychological state and the depth of her desperation. She genuinely believed she was protecting her son from making a terrible mistake, but her methods were destroying the very relationship she claimed to care about. Her fear of abandonment was driving her to behaviors that guaranteed the outcome she was trying to prevent. I began documenting everything with the same attention to detail she had used against me. Every mess she left, every boundary she crossed, Every lie she told became part of my growing collection of evidence. I took photos of her bedroom chaos, recorded her gossiping phone calls through the thin walls, and kept detailed notes about her invasive behavior. The turning point came when she crossed a line that even she couldn't defend. She invited her sister over for dinner without asking us, and proceeded to share embarrassing stories about our marriage while serving food from our kitchen. She told them about arguments we had, personal struggles I had confided in her, and even details about our intimate life that made me want to disappear. Her sister seemed uncomfortable with the oversharing, but didn't stop her from continuing the character assassination. She painted me as a lazy, irresponsible wife who was taking advantage of her precious son. The dinner conversation became a therapy session where she sought validation for her interference in our relationship, while serving our food to people who had no business knowing our private business. I recorded the entire dinner conversation from upstairs, capturing her violation of trust and complete disregard for our privacy. Her words were harsh and cruel, describing me as a burden that her son would eventually realize he needed to get rid of. She talked about our marriage like it was a temporary inconvenience that she could manipulate into dissolution with enough persistence and documentation. The next morning, I confronted her with my own folder of evidence. I had printed photos of her messes, transcribed her gossip sessions, and documented every boundary violation she had committed while living in our home. Her face went pale as she realized the tables had turned, and she was now the one being held accountable for her behavior. I explained that her investigation into my domestic capabilities had inspired me to conduct my own research into her character and fitness as a mother figure. The evidence showed a pattern of manipulation, invasion of privacy, and emotional abuse that painted her as the unsuitable family member. Her shock at being confronted with her own behavior revealed how completely unaware she was of her impact on others. Her immediate response was to become defensive and claim that everything she did was motivated by love and concern for her son. She insisted that her actions were justified because she was protecting him from a mistake, but her arguments fell flat when confronted with concrete evidence of her toxic behavior. The woman who had spent months building a case against me couldn't defend herself when the spotlight turned on her actions. I presented my evidence to my husband that evening, showing him the photos, recordings, and documentation of his mother's behavior. His reaction was a mixture of shock, disappointment, and anger as he realized how extensively his mother had been manipulating the situation. The woman he had trusted and defended was revealed as someone who had been systematically undermining his marriage. The recordings of her dinner conversation were particularly damaging because they showed her true feelings about our relationship and her willingness to share private information with outsiders. Her gossip sessions revealed a level of malice and calculation that went far beyond normal family concern. She had been actively working to destroy our marriage while playing the role of worried mother. My husband was forced to confront the reality that his mother's behavior was unacceptable and harmful to our relationship. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable, showing a pattern of manipulation and boundary violations that couldn't be explained away as loving concern. His mother had been exposed as someone who prioritized her own emotional needs over his happiness and well-being. The confrontation with his mother was painful but necessary. He showed her the evidence of her behavior and explained that her actions had crossed lines that couldn't be uncrossed. Her attempts to justify her conduct only made the situation worse, revealing how deep her manipulation had gone and how little regard she had for our autonomy as a married couple. She was given 2 weeks to find alternative living arrangements, ending her stay in our home and removing the source of constant conflict. Her departure was dramatic and filled with accusations about ungrateful children and manipulative daughters-in-law, but her words carried no weight when measured against the evidence of her own misconduct. The aftermath of her departure brought peace to our home and allowed our marriage to heal from the damage she had caused. Without her constant interference and manipulation, we were able to reconnect and rebuild the trust that had been eroded by months of her toxic presence. Our relationship grew stronger as we learned to recognize and resist manipulation tactics. Her attempts to continue her campaign against me from a distance were unsuccessful because the evidence of her behavior had destroyed her credibility. Family members who had initially been sympathetic to her situation began to distance themselves as stories of her manipulative behavior spread through the extended family network. Her reputation as a concerned mother was replaced by recognition of her as someone who couldn't respect boundaries. The experience taught me valuable lessons about standing up for myself and refusing to accept toxic behavior from family members. Her documentation project had backfired spectacularly, exposing her own unfitness while proving that I was capable of defending my marriage and home. The woman who had tried to prove I was an unfit wife had instead proven herself to be an unfit mother and person. Looking back, I realized that her behavior was a gift in disguise because it forced me to develop stronger boundaries and advocacy skills. Her manipulation had been subtle and ongoing, but her escalation to creating evidence against me was the mistake that allowed me to turn the tables and expose her true character. The very tools she used against me became the instruments of her own downfall. The folder of evidence she created about my domestic shortcomings became irrelevant when compared to the mountain of evidence about her character defects and boundary violations. Her meticulous documentation of my flaws paled in comparison to the comprehensive record of her manipulation, invasion of privacy, and emotional abuse. She had taught me to be a better investigator than she was. My husband's relationship with his mother never fully recovered from the revelation of her toxic behavior. The trust that had been broken couldn't be easily repaired, and her attempts to reconcile were hampered by her unwillingness to take responsibility for her actions. She continued to blame me for the conflict, refusing to acknowledge her role in creating the situation that led to her exposure. The extended family gradually learned about the situation through various channels, and opinions were divided about who was at fault. Some family members supported her position as a concerned mother, while others recognized her behavior as manipulative and inappropriate. The divide created lasting tensions that affected family gatherings and relationships for years to come. Her sister, who had witnessed the dinner conversation where she violated our privacy, eventually apologized for not speaking up during the incident. She admitted that she had been uncomfortable with the oversharing, but didn't know how to address the situation without creating more conflict. Her apology helped validate my feelings about the violation of trust and inappropriate behavior. The incident also opened my eyes to patterns in my husband's family that I had previously overlooked or dismissed. Other family members shared stories about similar experiences with her manipulation and boundary violations, revealing a long history of toxic behavior that had been normalized or ignored. My situation was not unique, but part of a larger pattern of problematic conduct. The documentation skills I developed during this experience proved valuable in other areas of my life. I learned to pay attention to patterns, keep detailed records, and present evidence in a clear and compelling way. These skills helped me in work situations and other conflicts where documentation and evidence were important for achieving fair outcomes. The resolution of the situation brought unexpected benefits to my marriage and personal growth. We learned to communicate more effectively about family boundaries and develop strategies for dealing with manipulation and toxic behavior. Our relationship became stronger and more resilient as we learned to protect our marriage from outside interference and maintain our autonomy as a couple. Years later, I occasionally run into people who know her and hear updates about her life. She has continued to struggle with relationships and has developed a reputation in her community as someone who is difficult to live with or maintain friendships with. Her pattern of manipulation and boundary violations has continued, affecting her relationships with other family members and friends. The experience taught me that sometimes the best defense is a good offense, and that standing up to toxic behavior requires courage and preparation. Her attempt to prove I was an unfit wife had backfired completely, instead proving that she was an unfit mother and person who couldn't respect boundaries or maintain healthy relationships with others. My marriage survived and thrived after her departure, proving that her concerns about my fitness as a wife were unfounded and motivated by her own insecurities rather than genuine problems with my character or capabilities. The woman who had tried to destroy my marriage had instead strengthened it by forcing us to confront manipulation and develop better communication skills. The folder of evidence she created about my domestic abilities became a source of laughter rather than shame as we realized how petty and ridiculous her complaints had been. Her documentation of normal household messes and occasional takeout orders seemed absurd when compared to the serious boundary violations and manipulation she had been engaging in throughout her stay in our home. The irony of the situation was not lost on me. The woman who had tried to prove I was unsuitable for marriage had instead proven herself unsuitable for any healthy relationship. Her behavior had been far more damaging and problematic than anything she had documented about my housekeeping or cooking skills. She had become the very thing she accused me of being while trying to build her case against me. In the end, justice was served through her own methods, and the truth about her character was revealed through the same type of documentation she had used against me. Her campaign to prove my unfitness had backfired spectacularly, exposing her own unfitness and destroying her credibility with family members who had initially been sympathetic to her concerns about my marriage to her son.